You don't really expect betrayal from your own sister, especially not when you're the one who stepped up to help. My name's Ethan. I'm not big on drama, and I usually keep my head down when family gets complicated. But this time I couldn't stay quiet. Growing up, Chloe and I had a weird dynamic. We were close when we were younger, bike rides, movie marathons, the works. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. Chloe started getting more praise, more attention, and I became the stable one, the one who doesn't need anything, the responsible one, you know, the background sibling. Still, I never resented her. Not really. I figured if I kept being dependable, things would balance out someday. That's why, when Chloe announced she and her fiancé Ben were getting married, I didn't hesitate to offer help. They had big dreams for the wedding white tent at Garden View Pavilion, string quartet, full course meal, the works, but no real way to fund any of it. And I had the means. Years of saving, smart investing, a solid job in tech. So I told her, I'll cover the wedding. My gift to you, no loans, no partials, just done. Signed the contracts, put the deposits down, and took over as the point of contact with the vendors. My dad, Robert, called me a blessing, Chloe cried. Ben clapped me on the back. It felt good, like I was finally part of something meaningful in this family. But then, slowly, the warmth faded. The planning moved ahead and I started noticing something off. Whenever I asked about seating, or if I'd be part of the ceremony, the answers were vague. Still finalizing the list, Chloe would say. Don't worry, we'll keep you in the loop. I trusted her. I gave her space. Then, 1 month before the wedding, I got the text, just a few words, from Chloe. Hey, Ethan, just wanted to let you know we're scaling back the guest list. It's gonna be super intimate. Hope you understand. Thanks again for everything. No call, no explanation, no invite. I stared at the message for a long time. Read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. My sister, the woman whose wedding I was paying for, was telling me I wasn't welcome. I called. No answer. Texted Ben. Silence. When I finally got a message back, it read, "Don't take it personal. We just didn't think you fit the vibe." And just like that, the switch flipped. I didn't yell. I didn't send angry texts. I didn't beg for a seat at the table I literally paid to set. I just sat there, staring at my phone, letting it all sink in. I'd covered everything venue at Garden View Pavilion, catering, flowers, photography, even the deposit for the string quartet they just had to have. I was in every contract. Every agreement was under my name. And yet, somehow, I didn't fit the vibe. I called our dad, Robert. Thought maybe he'd have something rational to say. His response? It's their day, son. Maybe just let it go. Let it go. I could have laughed if it didn't feel like a punch in the gut. That's when it clicked. Chloe didn't care. Ben didn't care. And Dad, he wasn't going to get involved. Fine. That's when I made a decision, not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. If I wasn't welcome, neither was my money. I started going through my emails. I still had full access to everything because I had handled all the bookings personally. Garden View Pavilion, the catering company, the florist, the decorators, all of it. I knew the schedule, the contacts, the terms. The wedding was 3 weeks out. Plenty of time to dismantle what I had built. But I wasn't going to do it in a blaze of chaos. No, that's what they probably expected. Some dramatic meltdown they could point at and say, "See, this is why he wasn't invited." I wasn't giving them that satisfaction. I was going to handle it like a business transaction. Step 1, cancel the venue. I called Garden View Pavilion the next morning. Spoke with the events coordinator, nice woman named Carly. "Hi, this is Ethan. I'm the contract holder for the Ben and Chloe wedding on the 20th. Yes, of course. How can I help? I need to cancel the reservation, effective immediately." There was a pause. "You're listed as the payer and signer, so yes, technically you can. Just to confirm, You understand the deposit is non-refundable? Absolutely. Go ahead and process the cancellation. And please notify me if anyone tries to change it or rebook in my name. Done. Step 2, catering. Same call, same outcome, full cancellation. Then came the florist, the photographer, the rentals. One by one, I reversed every deal I had personally arranged and financed. Within 2 days, the wedding had gone from a carefully curated event to nothing. No venue, no food, no flowers. Just an expensive date on a calendar and a bunch of guests they hadn't even bothered to warn. And they had no idea. I didn't tell them. I didn't warn them. I just waited. Because when you cut someone out like I didn't matter, you better be damn sure you don't still need me. It was almost peaceful, watching everything unravel from a distance. I didn't go out of my way to hide what I'd done, but I didn't broadcast it either. I just went about my life. Went to work, hit the gym, grabbed coffee like normal, and quietly enjoyed the calm before the storm. The day before the wedding, I got the call. Not from Chloe, not from Ben, from Dad. I didn't answer at first, but curiosity got the better of me. The third time my phone lit up, I picked it up. Ethan. His voice was sharp, on edge. What the hell is going on? I leaned back in my chair and sipped my coffee. Not sure what you mean. Don't do this. Don't pretend you don't know. Ben just showed up at the venue. It's locked. No setup. No staff. Nothing. They said the booking was canceled by you. I didn't even flinch. Yeah, that's right. There was a pause, like he wasn't sure he heard me correctly. You canceled everything? All of it, I said calmly. Catering, flowers, chairs, music, you name it. You're serious? As serious as Chloe was when she disinvited me. Dad sputtered for a second, then switched to that disappointed parent voice. I'd heard my entire life. This isn't how family handles things. No, I replied. Family doesn't take thousands of dollars from someone and then kick them off the guest list either. Click. I hung up. A minute later, the messages started flooding in. First from Chloe. Chloe, what did you do? Everything is gone. The venue says it was canceled. Are you kidding me? Chloe again, how could you be so selfish? After everything we did to make this day perfect. I waited a minute, then texted back. You didn't invite me, remember? I assumed you didn't want my involvement. Then silence. At least for a bit. But the damage was spreading. Around 8 a.m. the next day, the wedding day, I got a message from Aunt Lisa. Hey, there's nothing here. Are you sure the wedding is today? I just arrived and the place is a ghost town. A few minutes later, everyone's confused. No one knows what's going on. Part of me felt a little guilty. Most of the guests were innocent in this, after all. They probably bought outfits, booked flights, took time off. But then I remembered, none of this would have happened if Chloe and Ben had shown a shred of decency. Instead, they thought they could erase me from the picture after I funded it. Ben eventually cracked and called me. His voice was shaky, trying to play it cool but failing. Ethan, look, man, I know there's been some tension, but we can still work something out. We just need to figure out the venue, maybe get a backup caterer. I cut him off. You want my help now? There was silence on the line. After Chloe told me I didn't fit the vibe, she didn't mean it like that, he said, a little too quickly. Right. She meant it in the cut your own brother out but still use his credit card kind of way. Okay, he sighed. We messed up. We get it. But we're at City Hall now. We're gonna do something small. Please, man, can you at least help us pull something together? I didn't say anything at first. Let the silence drag out. Then I asked, why should I? And here's where Ben said something I didn't expect. Because you're better than this. For a second, that hit me. But then I remembered all those emails. All the voicemails I left that went unanswered. The way they smiled when I first offered to pay. And how quickly they disappeared when it was no longer convenient to include me. No, Ben, I said. I'm exactly this. I'm the guy who paid for a wedding I wasn't invited to. And I'm the guy who pulled the plug on it. when your greed outweighed your gratitude. I hung up. But Chloe, she didn't stop. She texted. She called. She even left me a voicemail crying. Ethan, please. I messed up, okay? I panicked. I thought we were doing the right thing keeping it small, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know it would turn into this. I almost believed her. Almost. But not quite. Then came the final Hail Mary text. Chloe, we're at City Hall. If you're willing to help, anything, I'll make it right. I could have walked away. Let them figure it out alone. But something in me, maybe pettiness, maybe closure, wanted to see it through. On my terms. So I replied, you want my help? Then you'll do it my way. No more exclusion. No more fake apologies. You make this right publicly. Otherwise, I'm out. Her reply was fast. Okay, deal. City Hall isn't the kind of place you imagine when you think wedding. No fairy lights, no florals, just gray floors, fluorescent lights, and the quiet hum of government air conditioning. But there I was, walking through the glass doors, watching Chloe and Ben scramble to make something out of nothing. She saw me first. Her face shifted from panic to relief, then settled into a fragile mix of guilt and hope. Ethan, she said, almost breathless, like saying my name might suddenly reset everything. Ben was behind her, straightening his jacket, avoiding my eyes. I didn't smile. I didn't hug them. I just walked up, calm, direct. You said you'd make it right. Chloe nodded quickly. Yes. Whatever you need, just thank you for coming. I looked around the lobby. A dozen or so guests milled around awkwardly. Some checked their watches. Some whispered. A few looked at me, clearly aware of the story circling behind the scenes. You really tried to do this without me, I said, my voice even. You thought I'd just disappear quietly after you cashed the checks. Ben finally spoke. We didn't think you'd care this much. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't think I'd care about being erased from my own contribution? He had no answer. I turned back to Chloe. You said you'd make it right, so let's start. She swallowed hard. Okay, what do you want me to do? I pulled out a folded sheet of paper from my jacket. On it, a speech, short, to the point. You're going to read this before the ceremony starts. She blinked. What is it? Acknowledgement, I said. To your guests, to me. You want help? You give credit where it's due. She skimmed it. Her cheeks flushed. We want to thank Ethan, who made this day possible. His generosity paid for the original venue, the vendors, and everything we lost. And even though we chose to exclude him from that day, he showed up when we needed him most. It was honest. It wasn't cruel, but it forced her to own what happened in front of everyone. Is this really necessary? She asked. If you want me to lift a finger, I said. Yes. She stood still for a moment, then slowly nodded. Okay. The judge arrived. People began taking their seats. It was a stripped-down, set-up 10 chairs. No decorations, no music. Just tension hanging thick in the air. Before the ceremony began, Chloe stepped up and cleared her throat. I just want to say something before we begin. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. She read the speech. Every word. Some guests looked confused. Some looked uncomfortable. But a few, especially those who had shown up early to find an empty venue the day before, nodded with quiet recognition. She folded the paper and stepped back. I said nothing, but she saw the acknowledgement in my eyes, the confirmation that I was holding the line. Then I got to work. I'd called in a few favors before arriving. A local caterer I had a good relationship with had pulled together some platters, nothing fancy, but enough. I texted the driver and told him to bring them in. As we waited for food to arrive, I spoke with the officiant. I asked him to delay just a few minutes while we got things in place. He agreed. The guests, they didn't seem to mind. If anything, they looked relieved, like someone had finally taken charge. Chloe stood off to the side, her dress slightly wrinkled, her hair less polished than it had been in her engagement photos. But for once, she looked grounded, not picture perfect, Not polished, just real. As the food arrived and was set up in a back corner of the room, Ben approached me. "Why are you still helping us?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Because I don't burn bridges. I just don't carry people who set them on fire." He nodded slowly. "We didn't deserve this." "No," I agreed, "you didn't." The ceremony was short, clean, no music, no big production, just a few words, 2 rings, and quiet applause. When it was over, people lingered longer than expected. They helped themselves to food. They asked questions. They gave side eyes, but no one caused a scene. Eventually, Dad came over to me. He hadn't said much until then. "You really turned it around." "I wasn't trying to save their wedding," I replied. "I was reminding them who made it possible." He sighed. "They know now." "Good," I said. "Let's hope it sticks." Chloe walked up a little while later. Her voice was quieter this time. Humbled. "Thank you, Ethan. Really. I didn't realize how badly we messed up until it was too late." "You realized when the decorations vanished," I said. "Let's not pretend it was deeper than that." She winced. "Fair." I looked her in the eye. "Don't ever make me invisible again." She nodded, eyes wet. "I won't." I gave her a small nod, then turned and walked outside. The day wasn't perfect, it wasn't pretty, but it was honest. And maybe that was better. The ceremony ended without applause. Not because people were cold, but because it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a group project that barely made the deadline. Chloe and Ben were married, technically, but their smiles were hollow, forced. The kind you put on when you're trying to convince everyone, including yourself, that everything's fine. I didn't stick around much longer. I said my polite goodbyes, shook a few hands, nodded at Dad. Chloe tried to hug me before I left. I let her, briefly, but it wasn't warmth that passed between us, it was consequence. I walked out of City Hall with the same quiet dignity I had walked in with. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just done. It's funny when you pull off something like this. People think the most satisfying part is the explosion, the chaos, the gotcha moment. But it's not. It's the silence afterward. It's the knowledge that they know without you ever needing to raise your voice, that they misjudged you, used you, and you weren't the fool they thought. The next few days were weird. I didn't hear from Chloe, didn't expect to, but the texts started rolling in from extended family, guests, people who'd heard bits and pieces and wanted the full story. "Is it true you paid for the whole wedding and weren't invited? Why did Chloe say you couldn't come? You canceled everything? That's wild, but kind of legendary." And this one from Aunt Lisa. "I always knew Chloe had a selfish streak, but what she did to you? Unforgivable. Proud of how you handled it, though. Quiet class. You didn't burn the house down, you just took back the keys." I screenshotted that one. Ben eventually sent me a text. Just one line, "You were right." No follow-up. No excuses. I didn't reply. Dad called a few days later. "You okay?" he asked. "Better than expected," I said. There was a pause. "I didn't handle it well." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." Another pause. This one longer. "I was trying to keep the peace." "You weren't keeping peace. You were keeping silence." He sighed. "I'll do better." "I hope so," I said. "Because next time, I'm not coming to the rescue." It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary, and I meant it. In the weeks that followed, Chloe posted a single photo from the City Hall ceremony. No captions. Just her and Ben, looking happy in the way people do when they're trying to convince their social media circle that things didn't go off the rails behind the scenes. No one tagged me. No acknowledgement beyond that awkward speech she'd read in front of the guests. And that was fine, because I didn't need a tag. I didn't need recognition. I got something better, closure. For years, I'd played the role of the reliable brother, the good sport, the quiet fixer. I was the one who handled things behind the scenes and never asked for credit. And in return, I got sidelined, ignored, and finally erased. But this time, I made sure they felt it. I made sure they understood that even quiet people have limits. that you can't cash someone's generosity like a blank check and then cross their name out of the guest list. And most of all, I made sure they knew I wasn't the background character in their perfect little story. I was the one holding the script, and when the plot went off the rails, I didn't shout. I didn't sob. I just closed the curtain. One last thing happened about a month later. I got a handwritten letter in the mail from Chloe. Inside, a long apology. The kind that doesn't ask for forgiveness, just offers it in full. I don't expect you to respond, she wrote, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand. What I did wasn't just thoughtless, it was cruel. You didn't just pay for a wedding. You believed in me, and I treated you like an afterthought. I've spent weeks thinking about that. I'm sorry, Ethan. I read it once, then again. Then I folded it up and put it away, not to forget it, but to remind myself that even the ones who hurt you most can learn, eventually. But forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a boundary, and I was finally learning to draw mine. These days, things are quieter. I don't talk to Chloe much. We'll probably never be as close as we once were, and that's okay. Some stories don't circle back, they just end, cleanly. I still go to Garden View Pavilion sometimes. My company's working with them on a few tech upgrades for their event system. I even joked with Carly, the coordinator, about that one wild cancellation. She laughed. That was you? Total legend move. I smiled. Yeah, that was me. The quiet one. The fixer. The one who finally said, enough. Story 2. I always thought I had a good childhood. You know, the kind where your dad helps you build a treehouse and tells you there are no monsters under the bed because he's already scared them off. That was my dad, my hero. Then everything broke when I was 14. One evening, Mom sat me down with this look on her face I'd never seen before. She said Dad had been cheating with his coworker, Elise. A few months later, they were married. Just like that. No big emotional reckoning. Just a clean switch from Mom to Elise. That's when Jeremy came into the picture, Elise's son, from a previous marriage. He was 11 at the time, awkward and quiet. Suddenly, I had a stepbrother, and my dad had a second chance at being a father. But instead of trying to balance things, he threw himself headfirst into the dad role for Jeremy. At first, I tried to be okay with it. I thought, he's just trying to help a kid who never had a real father. It's admirable. But then he started missing my dance recitals because Jeremy had baseball practice. Our Sunday morning breakfasts turned into family brunches centered around Jeremy's games. Dad even became an assistant coach for his little league team, despite not knowing a thing about baseball. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd find a balance eventually. Spoiler, he didn't. When I was 16, my mom got remarried to a great guy named Mark. He got a job out of state, and they asked if I wanted to come with them. I said no. I wanted to stay close to my dad. That choice? One of my biggest regrets. Fast forward to college. My final year. I got into a bad car accident on a rainy night. Someone ran a red light. I ended up in the ER with internal bleeding and needed emergency surgery. I called Mom and Mark. They were on the next flight. Dad? He texted me to say he couldn't come. Jeremy had just gotten dumped and was having a mental health spiral. I was in the hospital for 3 days. He never showed. That was the moment something cracked. I didn't cut him off, not completely, but emotionally, the tether frayed. I stopped expecting him to show up. I built my own life, got a job, made friends, started hiking again. Then I met Daniel. He was the new systems manager at my job. Dry humor, book nerd, big into sci-fi and trail hiking. We became friends. Then more. 3 years later, he proposed during a sunrise hike, our favorite spot. Just us and the early morning fog. It was perfect. We set the date for October 14th. Sent invites out 6 months early. I spent weeks wondering if I should ask my dad to walk me down the aisle. Despite everything, I wanted to believe this could be a moment of healing. Before I could ask, Dad invited me to lunch. He looked nervous, like actually nervous, which in retrospect, was a warning. That's when he told me. He couldn't walk me down the aisle because he was already committed to being Jeremy's best man. Jeremy and his fiancée had booked their wedding on the exact same day as mine. I just stared at him. You know that's my date. We sent out invitations. He nodded like it was unfortunate but unavoidable. Told me that Jeremy's venue was exclusive and harder to reschedule. And since my location was more flexible, maybe I could move mine. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. I told him no. Deposits were paid. Guests were flying in. That was my date. But he doubled down, said I was being selfish. That Jeremy needed him more because Jeremy never had a real dad. That line? It hit like a slap. When my grandfather, my mom's dad, heard what was happening, he lost it. He's always had my back, especially after the divorce. He didn't hesitate. I'll walk you down the aisle, he said. And I said yes. I thought it was over. But then came the whiplash. Dad called again, saying he'd changed his mind, he could do both weddings. He'd be at Jeremy's ceremony, then swing by my reception later to do the father-daughter dance. As if he could just drop in after prioritizing Jeremy, like I was an afterthought on a calendar. When I didn't immediately agree, he accused me of turning the family against him. He said I was selling my loyalty for a house. Yeah, that happened. Because earlier, he had offered Daniel and me his vacation home, a beautiful lakeside property, as a wedding gift. But after the blow-up, he took it back, then reoffered it, then acted like I owed him for it. Then came the twist. 2 weeks before the wedding, Dad called again, sobbing. Said Jeremy had changed his mind. He wanted his biological father to be best man after all. Dad was free now, and assumed he'd walk me down the aisle instead. I told him no, not because I wanted to punish him, but because my grandfather had stepped up when he stepped out, and I wasn't going to yank that moment away from him just because my dad's first option had fallen through. Dad exploded, accused me of being manipulated by Grandpa, said I cared more about a house than blood, that I was cold, that I was dead to him. I hung up, blocked his number, and waited for the storm to pass. But the storm wasn't done. It hadn't even started yet. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of seating charts, last-minute RSVPs, and me holding my breath every time my phone buzzed. I had Daniel, my mom, my stepdad, and Grandpa, all of them had my back. But there was this cloud hanging over everything, like I knew something was going to go wrong. I just didn't know how bad it'd get. The rehearsal was set for 5 p.m. the day before the wedding. We picked this little outdoor venue tucked near the woods, cozy but beautiful. Golden hour light spilling through the trees. My flower girls giggling, Grandpa practicing walking me down the aisle. Everything was going well, until I saw him. At first, I thought I was imagining it, just someone standing at the back, half hidden in the shadows near the trees. But then I saw the way he stood, hands clenched, slight sway to his posture. Dad. He hadn't RSVP'd. He wasn't invited to the rehearsal. And yet, there he was. I barely had time to process it before he marched forward and started yelling, loud, slurred. "This isn't right," he shouted. "I'm her father. I should be the one walking her." Gasps. Confusion. My bridesmaids froze. My flower girls looked terrified. And my grandpa stepped right in front of me, calm as ever. "You need to leave, Tim," he said. That's when Dad really lost it. Started throwing out years of resentment like they were wedding confetti. "This man has never liked me," he snapped. "He's buying his way into this family, trying to replace me." He stepped forward like he was going to shove my grandfather. That's when Daniel's brother tackled him, not violently, but enough to hold him back. And yeah, Dad had been drinking. You could smell it, see it, hear it in his voice. Venue security showed up fast. I was shaking. Everyone else just stood there in stunned silence while security escorted him off the property. He was still yelling, "You're dead to me. You'll regret this. You sold me out for a damn house." It was humiliating, but mostly, it was heartbreaking. And then came the part I never saw coming. After the chaos, Elise, my stepmom, pulled me aside, quietly. Said she needed to talk, somewhere private. She looked wrecked. I didn't know what to expect, but what she showed me left me speechless. Screenshots, dozens of them. Texts between Jeremy and his fiancée going back months. Conversations about choosing my wedding date. Not accidentally, not coincidentally, on purpose. Jeremy knew. He knew when our wedding was scheduled. And still, he insisted on the same day. Why? Because, according to his own words, he wanted to prove Dad loves me more than her. He literally said it, multiple times. It wasn't just a dig. It was a plan. He wanted to hijack the date, get Dad to pick him, and then rub it in my face. He was bragging about it in texts, laughing. And the worst part? Dad knew. He was in those text threads, not just reading them, responding, encouraging Jeremy, saying he understood and that Jeremy had every right to want to feel special. Not once did he shut it down. Not once did he say, "That's your sister's day. Let's pick another." No. He helped them book the venue. When Elise finished showing me everything, she was crying. She told me she'd always excused the favoritism, thought Jeremy just needed more support because his real dad left. But this was a line crossed. She said she was done. She told me she was filing for divorce. I didn't even know what to say. I just sat there, looking at the phone screen, rereading those texts over and over again. Like maybe if I stared long enough, the words would change. They didn't. That night, I stayed at a hotel with Daniel, trying to process it all. I could barely sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my dad's face at the rehearsal, angry, drunk, screaming that I'd chosen money over blood. But that wasn't what happened. What happened was this. He chose Jeremy, again and again, for years. He showed me every chance he got that I was the backup. And now, suddenly, because Jeremy didn't want him anymore, I was supposed to pretend none of it mattered? No. The wedding was the next day, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it. We hired extra security, just in case. Grandpa had his suit laid out and was ready. Elise, now officially Team Sanity, offered to testify if I ever needed a restraining order. My mom and stepdad were rallying around me. My bridesmaids were furious on my behalf. And Daniel, he never once questioned my decision to keep Dad away. "This is your day," he told me. "Nobody takes that from you." And that's when it finally sank in. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before the sun. Not because of nerves, those had burned off somewhere between the rehearsal disaster and Elise's confession. No, this was something deeper. It felt like I'd been walking through fog for years and finally stepped into daylight. Still a little cold, still not quite sure where I was going, but at least I could see things clearly now. The ceremony was beautiful. Grandpa walked me down the aisle, steady and proud. His hand didn't shake once. Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And for the first time in a long time, I believed I deserved that kind of love. There was no drama, no unexpected shouting. The extra security guys mostly just stood around eating cupcakes. I should have known it was too quiet. A few days later, I got a call from my cousin, Alina. She's Elise's niece. She had gone to Jeremy's wedding, which, yes, still happened on the same day. And what she told me? It flipped everything upside down again. Remember how my dad told me Jeremy kicked him out and chose his biological father to be best man? That was a lie. What really happened was this. 3 months before the wedding, Jeremy's birth dad, who'd been MIA for basically his whole life, popped back up out of nowhere. Wealthy, guilty, and willing to pay for the entire wedding venue. Flowers, tuxes, everything. Over $80,000. But there was a catch. Jeremy could have the dream wedding, or he could have my dad as best man. He chose the money. My dad, he was furious. Told Jeremy to pick. Jeremy picked the cash. So Dad chose not to attend, and then lied to me. Said he wasn't invited just so he could play the victim and guilt his way back into my wedding. That wasn't a father trying to make amends. That was a man trying to manipulate his way back in after losing his grip on both kids. It gets worse. Elena sent me a video. Someone filmed it at Jeremy's wedding. You can see the party in full swing, people laughing, dancing, and in the background, through a window, my dad, sitting alone in his car, just watching. He never went in, just watched for hours, and then started telling our extended family this whole twisted story about how I bribed my grandfather with the lake house to win his favor. Said I stole the land from him, that I tricked an old man into signing over his retirement dream. Some relatives believed him. I started getting passive, aggressive messages, wedding photos getting nasty comments, like some people will do anything for money. One uncle even said, I hope the house was worth losing your dad over. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went to his house. I didn't go to fight. I went for answers. Or closure, maybe both. I told him I knew everything about Jeremy's wedding, the texts, the video, the lies. He didn't apologize. He smirked, said it was a loyalty test, that if I really loved him, I would have insisted he walk me down the aisle no matter what. He even had the nerve to suggest I split the lake house with Jeremy. Said it wasn't fair that I got everything. That's when I knew. There was no fixing this. He didn't want a relationship. He wanted control. And when he lost that, he tried to rewrite the story. So I walked out. For the last time. Since then, more truth has surfaced. Elise followed through divorce papers filed. While digging through old emails, she found proof that Dad and Jeremy had been sabotaging me for years. Scheduling family events on weekends. They knew I had work. Making up stories about me being too busy or uninterested, so I looked like the flaky one. They even kept spreadsheets. My schedule, my plans, just to plan around it and make me look bad. And remember the college fund Dad told me didn't exist? Yeah, it existed. Every cent got spent on Jeremy's tuition, car, and now his wedding. When Elise asked why, he said, she has her mom and grandpa. She didn't need me. That was the final nail. So now I live in that lake house. It's quiet, peaceful. We're fixing it up, room by room. Daniel and Grandpa have gotten really into gardening and weekend projects. My mom and stepdad visit often. Elise is moving out of state to start fresh. We talk sometimes cordial, not close, but I respect her for finally stepping away. The rest of the family? Some believed my dad's version. Some didn't. I've cut out the ones who couldn't see past his lies. It's weird how peaceful that feels. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm chasing someone else's approval. I'm not trying to earn love or balance someone else's guilt. I've got my people. Daniel, Grandpa, my mom, a few friends who stood by me the whole time. And that's enough. I used to think family meant obligation. DNA, keeping the peace, even when it burned you. Now I know better. Family is who shows up, who stays, who doesn't treat your love like a competition. And if I lost a father along the way, no, I lost him years ago. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. Story 3. I don't talk about my childhood much, not because I've made peace with it, but because there was never anything to mourn. You don't grieve a ghost. You just stop acknowledging the empty chair. My name's Avery. I'm 26 now, but this all started long before I could vote or drive. I moved out when I was 16. Quietly. No big showdown, no yelling. Just a backpack, some tip money from the cafe job I wasn't supposed to have, and a bus ticket to nowhere in particular. I was never the daughter my parents planned for. That honor belonged to Grace, their blessing, their rainbow after the storm. That's what they always called her. She was born after a string of miscarriages, a miracle in their eyes. I, on the other hand, was the placeholder, a biological accident, a footnote to their grand family plan. They didn't say that outright, of course. It was more in the silences, the lack of birthday candles, the skipped school recitals, the way Mom used to say, "You're so mature, you don't need as much." I was 6 when I stopped asking for presents, 8 when I learned to sew up my own jeans. 10 when I realized I'd never see my baby pictures because, apparently, nobody took any. Grace's room looked like it belonged in a parenting magazine. Twinkle lights, pastel walls, themed bedding. Mine had a mattress on the floor and peeling paint. I was functional. Background noise. Someone to watch Grace after school or scrub dishes while she had piano lessons. She got parties with bounce houses. I got maybe next year. When I was 13, I saved up babysitting money to buy a winter coat. Mom had said we couldn't afford one, and then 2 days later paid for Grace's out-of-town gymnastics camp with matching monogrammed duffel bags. That was around the time I stopped trying to explain why it hurt. I didn't hate Grace. Not at first. She was a kid, just like I was. But over time, the dynamic shaped her too. She started handing me her backpack to carry, talking to me like an assistant, assuming I'd clean up her messes, cover for her lies. I once spent an entire weekend writing her English paper while she was at a sleepover. I asked Mom for help filling out a college grant application once. She said she didn't have time. Grace had a bake sale fundraiser to prep for. I stopped asking. By 15, I was working evenings at a diner a few miles away, mostly for tips. I didn't tell my parents. They probably would have told me it was too much or unnecessary. I needed it, though. I was tired of school shoes from thrift bins and backpacks that smelled like dust. Then came the night that broke whatever was left. It was a Saturday. I had a massive history project due Monday, a group assignment that only I seemed to care about. Grace had some cheer event an hour away. And of course, my parents expected me to drive her. I told them I couldn't. Dad blew up, said I was selfish, disrespectful, always with an attitude. Mom joined in, told me I was jealous of Grace, that she had goals, ambition, everything you're not. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just went upstairs, zipped my duffel, and planned. 2 weeks later, at 3:08 a.m., I walked out the back door and didn't look back. I crashed at my friend Erin's place for a while. Her older brother had a pull-out couch in the basement. I told her parents everything except the worst parts. They didn't ask many questions. Eventually, my old English teacher found out and helped me find a room in a retired librarian's garage suite. I paid $250 a month and kept the place spotless. I got my JED, waitressed full-time. Left town the day after I turned 18. New city, new name, new story. People don't ask much when you say your parents aren't around. I just let them assume the worst. In a way, the worst happened, it just didn't make the papers. That was 10 years ago. I have a stable job now, a roommate who doesn't ask personal questions, and a life that finally feels like mine. Then, last week, Grace messaged me. First contact in almost a decade. It said, "Mom's not doing great. She keeps asking about you. I think you owe her that much." I sat on that message for hours, stared at it until the screen blurred. My stomach felt like it dropped through the floor. Not because I missed them, not because I felt guilty. It was like reopening a time capsule you buried out of survival instinct and finding the rot still alive. I haven't answered yet. I might not, but it stirred something I hadn't felt in years. Not grief, not rage, just a strange hollow echo. A memory, walking past the hallway when I was 15, hearing Mom whisper to Grace before turning off her light, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." She never knew I heard that, but I did. And that's the thing, right? It's not just about the parties or the gifts or even the car Grace got when she was 13 for future motivation. It's the quiet declarations of love I was never part of. It's knowing that your absence makes for a cleaner family photo. So, no, I'm not going back. I'm not playing therapist for a woman who didn't call the police when her 16-year-old daughter vanished. I'm not resuming a role I never auditioned for. I'm just remembering now, and maybe, finally, beginning to unlearn. I didn't respond to Grace's message. Not right away. Not for a while. It sat there in my inbox like a ticking clock, daring me to rewind the past. I kept reopening it, reading those words over and over. You owe her that much. Oh, funny how guilt only finds you when you're no longer convenient. I thought maybe she'd leave it at that, let me disappear again. But a few days later, she sent a second message. You don't have to talk to them. Just talk to me, please? That one hit different. It didn't feel like bait. It felt quiet, not performative. Not like the Grace I remembered, the golden girl who used to smile while I carried her bags. I stared at that message even longer than the first one. Because the truth is, I don't know who Grace really is. I know who she was in our house, loved, protected, centered. But maybe that's not who she grew up to be. Or maybe it is, and she's just better at hiding it now. Or maybe, and this is the part that messed with my head the most, maybe I was the only one who saw things clearly. Maybe I was the only one awake in that dream. I didn't hate her. That's the worst part. I didn't even have the luxury of hating her. I hated what she stood for, how she never had to ask to be seen, how everything I did was measured against her shine. I hated being the shadow, the support beam, the spare. But it wasn't her fault she was the favorite. Not really. So I messaged back, something short. What exactly do you want to talk about? She replied within minutes, like she'd been waiting with her phone in hand. I just want to understand. You were there, and then you weren't, and no one ever talks about it. It's like you just disappeared. But I never stopped wondering why. That stopped me cold, because I didn't expect that. I expected manipulation, guilt trips, maybe even a sob story about mom's health. But not this. Not someone who sounded like they honestly didn't know what happened. So I told her. Not everything. Just enough. I told her about the coat, the birthday gifts, the way I was expected to be available, silent, and useful. How I was called independent like it was a compliment, when really it was just code for neglected. I told her about the night I left, what Mom said, what Dad didn't. She didn't reply right away. Hours went by. I figured maybe that was it, too much honesty, too fast. Maybe she'd shut down like the rest of them. But around midnight, my phone buzzed. I didn't know. I swear, Avery, I thought you just didn't like me. That hit me harder than I want to admit. Because yeah, I didn't like her. But not because of who she was. I didn't like her because every time I saw her, I saw everything I wasn't allowed to be. Loved, wanted, celebrated, she said after I left. Mom cried once, then told her, some people just turn out ungrateful, no matter how much you give them. I laughed when I read that. Actually laughed. Because, give me what? Scraps? Silence? A ride to a life I was never invited to join? Here's the twist though. Grace knows now. She started figuring things out in college. Her roommate apparently told her flat out, your sister didn't run away. She escaped. So she started digging, looking through old things, asking questions, realizing that no one, not one adult in our family, ever explained what happened to me. I wasn't mentioned. I was scrubbed out, like a mistake on a whiteboard. She said she started therapy a year ago. That being the miracle child came with a cost, that the pedestal became a prison, and I didn't know what to do with that, because I spent so long needing her to be part of the system that hurt me. It was easier that way. Easier to leave if she was just another smiling mask. But now she's sitting across from me on this digital bridge we're building, saying, I see it now. I see you now. And I don't know what that means yet. She's not asking me to come back. She's not defending them. She's just being honest in a way no one in our family ever learned how to be. And it makes me feel things I didn't expect. Like maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I'm not the villain in their bedtime stories. Grace asked me one more thing that night. Something that's been sitting with me ever since. Do you ever think about what would have happened if they'd treated us both like we mattered? I didn't answer her. Not because I didn't want to, but because that's the kind of question that burns slower than fire, and I'm not ready to hold the match just yet. Grace and I started talking more after that. Not every day, but enough that I stopped flinching when I saw her name pop up on my phone. It was strange at first, like messaging with someone who had lived a different version of the same movie. We'd swap old memories, but they never quite matched. She remembered birthday cakes I didn't get. I remembered being blamed for things she forgot ever happened. She asked me once, kind of out of nowhere, "Do you remember what Mom told you the night you left?" I hesitated. Because yeah, I remembered. I remembered every word. "You're always so negative. Maybe if you smiled more, people wouldn't feel like they had to walk on eggshells around you." That wasn't the worst thing she said, but it was the one that stuck, because it summed everything up, didn't it? In their eyes, I wasn't hurting. I was just bitter. I wasn't quiet because I was shut out. I was just cold. Grace didn't know any of that. Not really. They never told her the truth. So I asked her straight, "Did they ever say what happened to me?" After I left, there was a long pause. Like, I went and made coffee and came back kind of long. Then she said, "They told me you ran away after sneaking out to meet some boy, that you got caught and were too embarrassed to come home." I stared at that message for a long time. A boy. That was the story they told? That I threw away my life over some teenage crush? It was so stupid it almost didn't hurt. Almost. But then it did, because it was a reminder of how little they knew me. Or cared to. And Grace? She said she never believed it. Even then, said she remembered one night, when we were younger, I must have been 14, Mom yelled at me for forgetting to defrost chicken. I spent the rest of the night scrubbing an already clean kitchen while crying quietly. She said that's when she realized something wasn't right. But no one asked questions. No one pushed. Not even the school. Apparently, a few months after I vanished, a counselor brought me up at one of Grace's school meetings just trying to follow up on a student who had dropped off the map, and Mom lost it. Said I was manipulative, a drama queen, that I ran away because I couldn't handle discipline. She made it very clear I wasn't missing. I wasn't welcome. They didn't just ignore my absence, they buried it. That's what gutted me the most. Not the lies, but the effort it took to erase me. I used to think they just didn't care, that they moved on out of convenience. But now I realize they had to, because if they acknowledged the truth, their whole narrative cracked open. They couldn't have the perfect little family, the miracle child, the Instagram holidays, if someone out there was telling a different story. So they rewrote mine. Grace said she found my name in a family photo album, once written in pencil, faded. No pictures, just the name, and then nothing, like I'd never existed. That's when I told her something I hadn't said to anyone. I never wanted to run away. I just didn't want to disappear in my own home anymore. There was a long silence. Then she said, "I think we both disappeared, just in different ways." And I believed her, because she may have been the one they saw, the one they celebrated, but she wasn't free either. She was put on a pedestal so high, she couldn't move without falling. They just turned us into opposite sides of the same coin. One too visible, one invisible, both lonely. But here's where it got complicated again. About a week passed. Things felt quiet. Me and Grace were still texting, still finding our rhythm. I was starting to think, maybe this could be something. Not a full-on sisterly reunion or anything, but something honest, something real. Then I got a text. "Unknown number. So you can talk to your sister but not your dying mother?" Shameful. I blocked it immediately. Didn't even flinch. But I knew what that meant. The storm had found me again. A few hours later, Grace texted, "I think Mom saw our messages on my iPad. She's freaking out." Apparently, it turned into a full-blown meltdown. Screaming. Accusations. She told Grace she was encouraging dysfunction, that she was feeding into my delusions. My dad got involved too. Told her bringing me back into the fold was like inviting poison into the house, Grace said. She looked him straight in the eye and told him she was never the poison. He just blinked, like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. After that, the floodgates opened. I started getting messages from random numbers, some cousin I barely knew, a woman who I think used to be in Mom's Bible group, someone else I couldn't even place. They all said the same thing. Guilt dressed as love. You'll regret this when she's gone. Family is all we have. She never stopped loving you, and I just blocked them all. Because here's what they don't get. You can't erase someone for a decade, then demand their presence because it fits your narrative now. You can't ignore a kid until they walk out of your life and then act shocked they stayed gone. They didn't just lose me, they gave me away. And now that the mask is slipping, they want me back to complete the picture, to play the part of the prodigal daughter, to bring balance to a story that was never balanced to begin with. But I'm not coming back to clean up the mess they pretended didn't exist. I'm not a chapter in their redemption arc. I'm the author of my own. Things quieted down for a bit after the message storm. A few days passed without any unknown numbers, without guilt-laced texts or quotes about forgiveness. I thought maybe they'd backed off. Maybe they realized I wasn't going to crack. But peace in that family never lasts. Not really. Yesterday I got a letter. A real one. Envelope. Cursive handwriting. No return address, but I recognized the penmanship instantly. My mother always wrote like she was performing for a camera. Loopy and dramatic. Like the shape of her letters was more important than the words. I stood by the counter for a long time, just holding it. I could have thrown it away. Should have, maybe. But I didn't. I opened it. 3 pages. Not a single apology. Not one. Just phrases like, "You're holding on to pain that doesn't exist anymore. You were always difficult to love, but we tried. We gave you everything: food, clothes, a roof. What else did you want?" It read like a checklist, like survival was supposed to count as love. There was one line that stopped me cold. She said, "Grace telling me about therapy was the final blow. I can't believe you've poisoned her against her own family." Poison. Funny how truth always sounds toxic to those who've lived too long inside lies. She ended it with this: "If you come back, we can move forward. But if you don't, I hope one day you realize how much your absence has hurt this family." No mention of how they hurt me. No mention of the night I left. No mention of how they let me vanish without a single phone call or police report. Just a request that I forget it all, sweep it away, pretend it never happened. But here's the thing. I don't need revenge. I don't need a big moment where I scream in their faces or make a dramatic exit. I already left. And the longer I've stayed gone, the more I've realized I didn't walk away from a home. I walked away from a stage. One where I was never given a script, just expected to applaud from the wings. Grace asked me last week if I thought I'd ever forgive them. I told her I don't know. Because forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's not a prize for those who ask the loudest. It's something that grows only when the soil is ready. And right now, I'm still clearing out the weeds they left behind. She understood, didn't press. We still talk, me and Grace. Not about Mom, not about the others, just about us, the real versions, the ones who learned how to breathe outside that house. Sometimes we send each other photos of random things: sunsets, funny signs, a new recipe that went horribly wrong. And it's easy. It's the first time in my life I've had something with her that didn't feel like a transaction. She's not asking me to fix anything. She's just there. And that means more than anything anyone else in that family ever did. A few people, mostly strangers who heard parts of my story, have asked if I'd ever go back. Not just for Mom, but for closure, for healing. But I've come to understand something. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's what you build when you're finally safe. I'm safe now. I have a home, not the kind with a shared last name or a matching front door, but the kind where I can breathe, where I can exist without shrinking. I changed my name 2 years ago. It was one of the hardest, most freeing things I've ever done. Not because I was running, but because I was done carrying a name that felt like a bruise I couldn't explain. Now, when I sign things, it's mine, fully mine. And when people ask about my family, I just say, "We're not close." Most folks leave it at that. But the truth is, we were never close. Not really. They were a fire I spent my whole childhood trying to stay warm near, only to realize one day I was always the kindling. Now, I keep my own fire. Small, quiet, steady. It doesn't burn anyone, but it doesn't go out either. And that, to me, is everything.